We've been investing in seniors housing since the mid-90s, and we are one of the larger senior housing investors in the U.S. today. The demographic story for senior housing is incredibly strong. The United States had a large baby boom after World War II, basically from about 1946 to 1964. Those people have aged, and the oldest of them, I'm right at the tail end, the oldest of them are in their mid-70s, and the youngest are just inching up on 60. Over the next 10 to 15 years, this group of people is going to be aging into that period of their life where they're going to be looking for more assistance in their daily living, the activities of daily living, and their housing solutions. It's a demographic wave coming for seniors housing. At the same time, as birth rates have fallen steadily since the baby boom, there are fewer and fewer adult children per older baby boomer. They need these adult children to help them with these daily activities, help them make decisions about their housing solutions, and so on. And increasingly, boomers are going to be looking for more and more professional assistance in their future housing needs. Another property sector I'd like to highlight is cold storage, refrigerated warehouse. There was a pretty clear change in consumer preference that happened over the past 10 years before the pandemic, where many U.S. consumers were expressing stronger demand for fresh food as opposed to frozen or processed food. I think that makes sense, healthier food in general. During COVID, a lot of American consumers got really comfortable with the idea of buying grocery items, food in particular, online, something most households had largely never done before the pandemic. So what I'm showing you on this chart here by product category from grocery stores is how much did that preference or tolerance for buying items online increase during the pandemic, and how has it changed since the peak of the pandemic? And I've highlighted a few categories on here that really need to be temperature controlled. Fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh meats, and deli meats. And the preference for those buying them online has gone up a lot during the COVID period and has not backed off. This is a permanent change in consumer preference in the US. More fresh foods and more comfortable getting them through an online distribution channel. All of that adds up to cold storage warehouse. Prior to the pandemic, the amount of dollars spent on food at home, in other words, grocery stores, and food away from home, in other words, restaurants, was just about the same. And in fact, 2019 was the first year in US history where Americans spent slightly more money on food away from home than food at home. Well, the pandemic, of course, upended all of that. The amount of dollars being spent on food at home soared, the amount of money being spent on food away from home plunged, and then they came back towards each other. But there is now a sustainable gap between money spent on food for at home versus away from home, and that gap is not narrowing. Take that along with the higher consumer acceptance of online shopping for grocery, and again, that creates great tailwinds for refrigerated warehouse, what we call cold storage. Let's take a quick look at medical office property. When we look at the data, we see several things, of course. Americans are getting older. Older people spend more money and more time on doctor's visits, on medical procedures, medical services, and so on. So what we're showing you here is visits to physician's office by age. Goes up steadily, of course, as you get older. I think we all understand that. Per capita medical expenditures by age goes up as you get older. I think we all get that. What else is going on here is that the healthcare providers themselves are trying to move the provision of services from center city, downtown locations that are very capital intensive, huge complexes of medical properties in cities. They're trying to move those out to where these older patients live. Many, many older people don't want to get in a car and drive to a downtown location in a city to get medical services. They want the brand name, they want it near them, and that's what the service providers are doing. And the data is showing you the change in inpatient versus outpatient patient visits. And it's a very clear trend. Hospitals and service providers are trying to make more and more medical services be provided on an outpatient basis as opposed to an inpatient basis. It's cheaper for them, it's cheaper for the whole system, and it's cheaper for the customer as well. And then finally, the lab space, lab and life science. Office property, broadly speaking, has a lot of uncertainty, but lab space and life science property simply does not. The activities that go on in life science buildings cannot be done on a work-from-home basis for the most part. You're not taking your science experiment, your advanced medical research, you're not taking that home with you and doing it in the spare bedroom or the basement. It has to be done most of the time in a climate-controlled environment with strict guidelines, strict safety protocols, and so on. Today in the United States, the vacancy rate for life science properties is basically zero. And that's true across all of the large life science centers in the United States, those centers being Boston and San Francisco and San Diego and New York, and there's a handful of others. But the point being that the demand for this space is very, very strong. It does not have an alternative that can be easily adopted. And the demand is not only growing fast, it's going to continue to grow fast. And we can look at simple things like private equity venture capital going into the life science space. It correlates extremely well with future demand growth for the space itself.